There's a nice verse in Canto 1, Chapter 2, where the speaker in Canto 1, Chapter 2 is Sutta, speaking to the sages of Naimisharanya, and I like that verse. It goes like, you can respond if you can remember. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. It's Sutta speaking, and he says, before beginning this recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, let me offer my respects. And he offers respects to four personalities: Narayana, and to Narayan Rishi, an expansion or incarnation of Narayan, unto the goddess Saraswati, and to the author Vyasadeva. Before beginning this recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, let me first offer my respects to these four personalities: Narayana, Narayan Rishi, Goddess Saraswati, and the author Vyas. Yesterday evening, it was an honor, a privilege to speak to the Chinese devotees with a translator on the topic of Canto 5, chapters 1 through 15. That was pretty good. We did that in an hour and a half. That's a lot of subject matter. And in chapter 5, we just touched on chapter 5 in one slide. And chapter 5 is a very robust chapter. Chapter 5 of Canto 5 is a discussion about Rishabdev. Little background. Rishabdev was the son of his father, Nabhi. Nabhi was great devotee, and he performed, or under his direction, the Brahmanas performed a big sacrifice to satisfy Vishnu. He was a Vishnu Bhakta. Vishnu descended on the back of Garuda. Very beautiful painting. In the background, there's the Havan. In the foreground, there's Maharaj Nabhi. And then descending from the sky is Lord Vishnu standing on the back of Garuda. Garuda's wings are flapping very gently, and Lord Vishnu says to Nabhi, "You pleased me very much by your sacrifice. Is there something I can do for you?" And he said, "Yes, you can become my son." We discussed this a little bit. Is it possible the supreme source of everything, that from which everything comes, can become one's son? And transcendentally speaking, it's a rasa of parental affection. So Lord Vishnu agreed, and he became his son. The son was named Rishabdev, an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Rishabdev performed activities, and chapter 5 is one of those activities that is described. The whole chapter is another very beautiful painting. In my mind's eye, I'm seeing a beautiful painting. There he is on the right side, seated on a very elevated, respectful seat, Vyasasana, and he's speaking to his 100 sons. That's a lot of sons. And the eldest of those sons is Bharata, who became the next king. And he's instructing all of them, not just Bharata, of the way of achieving spiritual perfection. Now, they're sons of a king, the emperor of the world. Emperor of the world, not just the king in some kingdom somewhere. He's very, very powerful. He's Vishnu, and these are Vishnu's instructions in the capacity of a king, Rishabdev, instructing his 100 sons how to not become entangled in worldly affairs. And instead, the first verse of Canto 5, Chapter 1, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse number 1, starts with Tapodivyam. Tapa means going to school, or working, or raising a family, or whatever it is that you do. When you do that for the purpose of purification, that's tapa. The purpose, purification. Purification means controlling the mind and senses for the purpose of satisfying the personality of Godhead. So tapo divyam. Divya means transcendental. And then the rest of the chapter, Canto 5, Chapter 5, is describing how to live one's life immersed in performance of duty, at the same time detached, which is the trick. I mean, to be immersed in doing something and to be detached from that something, that's transcendental. Or one needs transcendental shelter while living in the world, doing things of this world, but not attached to those things of this world, because the tendency is to be attached to something. Supposing you're not attached to the personality of Godhead, then you're going to be attached to that something. And you're attached to that something, then you become involved in the fruits of that something that you're attached to doing, and you get implicated in the laws of nature. Like domino effect, boom, 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 boom. And the starting point is forgetfulness. And the cure is remembrance. Light is the cure for darkness. Turn on the light and the darkness is dispelled. So the light is this remembrance, constant remembrance while doing things of this world. That's the attachment, Chapter 5, Bhagavad Gita. Attachment to the Supreme is the same as detachment from matter, or detachment from matter is the same as attachment to the Supreme. Is it possible to do both? Not only possible, that's our assignment. Human form of life has that assignment. Okay, could you say it again? Sure, we'll say it again. Attachment to the Supreme is the same as detachment from matter. Detachment from matter is the same as attachment to the Supreme. When there's light, there's no darkness. When there's darkness, there isn't light. They don't mix. Like now, the sun is rising. The sun hasn't come up yet, according to calculation. But there's light in the sky, but it's not full light because the sun hasn't come up yet. So it's dawn between darkness and light or day. So it's in between. We're in that in between. Most of us are in the in between stage between darkness and light, and then keep going. Not just wait and some time and all of a sudden the light's going to come on. But we practice attachment to the Supreme, which results in, or the byproduct is, detachment from matter. So the topo divyam, that's the detachment from matter part, but the divyam part is attachment to the Supreme. And that's the principle to live one's life by. That's what Rishabdev is instructing his 100 sons. And reading from that chapter, I'm going to read a verse number 19. Number 19. Look at that. There it is. I think what I'm going to do, just because of sake of time, I'm just going to read the translation. Let's go to the translation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. My transcendental body, Satchitananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but it is not a material human body. It is inconceivable. I'm not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for the devotees. Far from my heart have I abandoned irreligion or adharma and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me due to all these transcendental qualities. People generally pray to me as Rishabdev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities. How'd you like hearing something like that from your father? Can't imagine something like that exactly. But they're being edified. They're being educated. That's their school. That the path of transcendence. They'll go on to duties in this world. It says there's 100 sons. 9 of those sons, this is important, they become total transcendentalists like Narada Muni, beyond any consideration of occupation, varna. A number of them become brahmanas, a number of them become kshatriyas, based on qualification, not based upon birth. Because by birth, their father is a kshatriya, so they become kshatriyas based on birth. But they don't all become kshatriyas. Some become brahmanas, and some become transcendentalists beyond varna and ashram. So it's by point is, it's by quality, not by birth, that one's service or identity is understood. And he wants all of them. Not that they have to become like him, like Vishnu, but they have to perform their duties. We'll call it in Krishna consciousness. Perform like this, same as Bhagavad Gita. Perform your prescribed duty, whatever that is, and or whatever that is means. You have a nature, you have body, you have a psychophysical nature according to your psychophysical nature. Perform your duty. And always think of me. That's Bhagavad Gita message. And now I'm going to read the purport. In this verse, the words idam shridam mama durvibhavyam are very significant. Generally, we experience 2 energies, material energy and spiritual energy. We have some experience of the material energy, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego, because in the material world, everyone's body is composed of these elements. Within the material body is the spirit soul, but we cannot see it with the material sense, material eyes. When we see a body full of spiritual energy, it is very difficult for us to understand how the spiritual energy can have a body. It is said that Lord Rishabdev's body is completely spiritual. Therefore, for a materialistic person, it is very difficult to understand. For a materialistic person, the completely spiritual body is inconceivable. We have to accept the version of the Vedas when our experimental perception cannot understand the subject. As stated in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The Lord, the Supreme Lord, has a body with form, but that body is not composed of material elements. It is made of spiritual bliss, eternity, and living force. By the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord can appear before us in his original spiritual body. But because we have no experience of the spiritual body, we are sometimes bewildered and see the form of the Lord as material. The Mayavadi philosophers are completely unable to conceive of a spiritual body. They say that the spirit is always impersonal. And whenever they see something personal, they take it for granted that it is material. That's an interesting way to describe it, huh? Usually it's from the other end, and this is from this end. Form means, if you're Mayavadi, form means material, because spirit is without form, according to that view. So a form of the Lord means material form. And spirit is without form. That's the presumption, or the fundamental paradigm. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, Abhajananti mam buddha manushim tanam ashitam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Well, that covered a lot in that paragraph. There's another paragraph, but we'll pause, say a few things. I like very much. It's quite astounding that here's this father with 100 children explaining his identity as Vishnu, where how his name is derived, Rishabdev, the best of person, human being, Rishabdev. And people think of me as material, and that's okay. But please, you should understand this: I and this body are not material, which is very interesting because he had a father, he had a father, he had a mother, and he was born. That was like a material body, and same for Krishna's appearance, and etc., etc., etc. It appears when the Lord appears in this world, when avatars of the Lord appear in this world, he may not also, but he may appear as if one of us, so that the persons who are materialistic can rest their materialistic view on, see, he has a mother and a father, and there's the child, and so he's material. So there's different views that people have. But here, Rishabdev is making it very clear to his son, I have a transcendental form. And you, my sons, should understand it. And you, my sons, should not misunderstand it. You should, so if the one of the father-son relationship is, or parents and child relationship is natural. In all species of life, it's a natural inclination. We're dependent, and those who are to some degree at least more independent than us, they maintain us, and there's a natural affinity for the one who is maintaining you. and so forth and so on. It's quite natural. So that he's speaking to his sons. The message he's speaking is the message of detachment, like be detached from me, but be detached from me in the material conception of who I am, but have a transcendental conception of who I am because that's who I am, and then perform your duties in this world in that consciousness. It's really elevated chapter. Let's go on next paragraph. Unintelligent people think that the Supreme Lord accepts a body composed of material energy. We can easily understand the material body, but we cannot understand the spiritual body. Therefore, Rishabdev says, Idam Shriram Mama Durvibhavyam. In the spiritual world, everyone has a spiritual body. There is no conception of material existence there. In the spiritual world, there is only service and the receiving of service. There is only Savior, Seva, and Sevaka. That is, person serves, the process of service, and the servant. These three items are completely spiritual, and therefore the spiritual world is called absolute. There's no tinge of material contamination there, being completely transcendental to the material conception. Lord Rishabdev states that his heart is composed of Dharma. His heart is composed of Dharma. Dharma is explained in Bhagavad Gita 1866. Dharva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. In the spiritual world, every living entity is surrendered to the Supreme Lord and is completely on the spiritual platform. Although there are servitors, the served and service, all are spiritual and variegated. At the present moment, due to our material conception, everything is durbhavya, durvibhavya, inconceivable. Being the supreme, the Lord is called Rishabha, or the best. In terms of Vedic language, Nityo Nityanam, we are also spiritual, but we are subordinate. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the foremost living entity. The word Rishabha means the chief or the supreme and indicates the supreme being or God himself. The process, the Srimad Bhagavatam is described as being the graduate study of the undergraduate study. Bhagavad Gita is the undergraduate study. And it's not that in graduate school there are principles that contradict what you learn in undergraduate school. Rather, in graduate school, the principles that you learn are more refined, more subtle, more specific in their application, and so forth. And so that's what's happening here in this purport. The messages of this paragraph and this verse are an extension or a postgraduate or graduate study of the message of Bhagavad Gita. So it's not a new message. In fact, even the undergraduate study, the Bhagavad Gita, is understandings that we already know but we've forgotten. It's a nice to go into that a little bit. A little drama, little Prabhupada story drama. there was a nice situation in New York where Prabhupada began the Hare Krishna movement. And it began by little gatherings in a room. Then eventually the devotees got together and rented a storefront. And then there were gatherings 3 nights a week in the storefront. And there were 3 very nice parts: kirtan, class, and prasadam. Always kirtan, simple. Sometimes the kirtan would go on, and so a simple melody because the devotees were just learning, and it was very nice. And as the kirtan became a regular part, then came dancing. During kirtan, I'd stand up and dance, and then Prabhupada would give class, and then prasadam, but custom dancers and prasadam. So kirtan, kata, prasadam, 1, 2, 3. And in course of time, the kirtan became so lively that one devotee, the leader of that group, his name was Brahmananda. Brahmananda said to Prabhupada, "Do you think it's possible that we could take this kirtan out into the public?" And Prabhupada's reply was, "I was just waiting for you to ask. But we need a permit because we don't want to have a problem with the police because they won't know what we're doing." So they got a permit. And there's a movie of their marching with a big bass drum, boom, boom, boom. Because they didn't have Rajangas cartels. They had big cymbals, and, so they marching, going to Tompkins Square Park. In a celebrated scene, many of you have seen photographs of this. They sat underneath an elm tree and had kirtan. And they sat in kind of like Prabhupada in the center and sat around Prabhupada and just had kirtan sitting. And eventually people hearing the kirtan came around, and it was a crowd of people, substantial crowd of people, like, "What's this? What planet is this man from? We've never seen anybody dressed like this before." So kirtan went on. And then at a certain point, the signal was there, the kirtan was over. Now, what I'm narrating is somebody who was in that audience. It was Satsvarupa Maharaj at the time. So Prabhupada stood. There's a very celebrated photograph. In the background is a church. Right behind him is the elm tree. And Prabhupada is standing there with hands in front of him very calmly. And there's this expectation. What's this man from some other planet going to say? And he spoke very simply. Simply, "I've not come to teach something new. I've come simply to remind you of something you have forgotten." And that's Bhagavad Gita. But you're not the body. And who are you? We just forgot. And in the place of who we are, we have a misconception of who we are. You color it this way and paint it that way, and this complexion and this nationality and this gender and this language and this culture, and all kinds of upadhis. That's not who we are. And then there's who we are inside all of that. So I've come to remind you of what you have forgotten. I'm not come to teach something new. I mean, that's a very nice way to express the opening remarks. And then, of course, the message of chapter 2 Bhagavad Gita, which is what's here also. We're not the body. And Rishabdev is the father, and these are 100 sons plus other members of his kingdom, and they're all hearing the same message. But he wants them to understand that he, their father, or Rishabdev, or as the supreme, the chief, the best, Rishabha, Deva, is the personality of Godhead. I mean, How are they going to understand that? Because people are thinking in terms of the body. The body is the self. The self is the body. There isn't a distinction between self and non-self. This is we're this body. That's the bodily conception. So he, the father, is elevating his son beyond the bodily conception. So it's like the graduate study of the undergraduate study. Krishna, it speaks something quite similar to Arjuna, a Jopi son of Yayatma, etc. He is transcendental. So what does that mean? Transcendental, beyond matter, beyond the influence of matter. Although the manifestation may look like matter, and that's true for anything spiritual. Just like take the Srimad Bhagavatam, looks like a book. Looks just like a book, but it's not an ordinary book. It's a transcendental book. It looks like, but it's not the same as. Or the mantra or the name looks like, sounds like something material. And for the person who thinks like that, it can conceptually within their mind remain conceptually spiritual or material, but it's not. And therefore, the action of the sound of Krishna's name, the action of the message of Krishna's book, the action of the form of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna, they are all absolute and they have absolute action or impact on consciousness just by contact with that which is transcendental. One becomes transcendental. It's like a couple of examples, like touching electricity. You become electrified. Touching fire, you become burdened because fire has a quality, electricity has a quality, and Krishna has a quality. Contact Krishna. And the awakening of bhakti, which is what Rishabdev is doing with his son, is he's elevating their consciousness, or we who are reading chapter 5 of Canto 5, we're becoming benefited by hearing Lord Vishnu in the form of Rishabdev explaining to his sons who he is and who they are, and what's illusion and what's reality. And now back to the premise, and I'm going to end abruptly. The premise, the beginning part of the chapter is how to live your life so that that becomes your realization, even while you're moving around in the world. It's the starting point, and then amplified in other verses, is Tipo Divyam. Human form of life is meant for Tipo Divyam. We're meant not to indulge our senses and sense objects, but are meant to resist that tendency and accept instead some restraint or tapa, purposeful tapa, not tapa because it hurts, but tapa in the sense of just like our regular principle. The mode of goodness is assisted by performing or observing these four regular principles. Or say it the other way, those that don't observe the four regular principles, the mode of goodness disappears, and the other modes of nature become prominent, ignorance and passion. And then suffering, the consequence of actions in those modes of nature. So at least the frame of reference is mode of goodness and these restrictions. So he's telling his sons in a different way, but same principle. Observe restrictions. Tipo Divyam. For a divyam purpose, for a transcendental purpose, not just austerity for austerity's sake. But for a purpose. So like anything that we do, take, when you cook, what's the purpose? there's the material and then there's the spiritual. Or go to school. There's purpose. Purpose can be material, purpose can be spiritual. And you fill in the blank. Anything that you do, there's a way to do that thing that has a spiritual destination, objective, goal, sankalpa. Supposing you don't have a spiritual goal or spiritual purpose, then you may do the same thing because of our body or psychophysical nature, and we'll do the same thing, but in a material way and be entangled and carry on. And say it the other way. There's another same things or looking the same, but not the same. So this is the distinction between matter and spirit. It's resting upon the conception of life that we have. And then according to that conception, then there's motion, there's action, and there's relationships with matter and other living entities and the world around us. And there's a spiritual approach and there's a material approach that's resting upon proper conception. So he, Rishabdev, is giving his son the spiritual conception. I mean, that's a very qualified father. He's Lord Vishnu, after all. So he's equipping his son for life of transcendence. And one last thing, again, some of his sons, of his 100 sons, some will be king, kshatriyas. Some will become elevated brahmanas, same father, but different situations. And some will become perfected souls. We don't hear about the Navayogendras so much later in the Bhagavatam, after Canto 5. We don't hear so much about the Navayogendras, but later we hear about them. So we hear the Srimad conclusion. We hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We're encouraged to hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. And the purpose of contact with something that's fully spiritual, do it regularly, we become spiritualized. Although our consciousness may not be so spiritualized, the consciousness becomes spiritualized by regular contact with transcendent. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is a fully transcendental literature. Whether we understand it or don't understand it, the action of contact with transcendence brings the realization. This is transcendental literature. Not Nick. That fully transcendental literature. And somehow, by the grace of our Padre Acharya, we have the entire Srimad Bhagavatam to take the association of, hear, contemplate, become purified, discuss. So let's see if there's some discussion. Canto 5, Chapter 5. Rishabdev instructing his 100 sons. Yeah.
Maharaj, the teachings of Rishabdev to his sons is also the basis of Jainism.
Basis of?
Jainism.
Jainitum?
Jains. Jain. J-A-I-N.
Jain.
Jainism.
Okay.
Which is a form of Shunyavad.
Yeah.
Yet in this verse, he makes it very clear.
Yes, he does.
That my body is not material.
Yes.
It is purely spiritual. Yet the Jain formula is God plus desire equal to man. So if you remove desire, man becomes God. And they consider even Rishabdev in that light. It is quite bewildering, Maharaj, how you go from his very clear teachings that uh, I am God and you are man, I am infinite, you are infinitesimal, to that. Because it's almost the opposite, that they are taking from the same verses, the same teachings.
Welcome. As you already know, the lady who was the speaker at the Artha Forum, she and her husband are Jains by birth. And she has a lot of affinity for Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhakti, and it's on the one hand, miraculous that such a pious person as this lady and her husband find such affinity for bhakti, since, as you pointed out, so it's a brand, one might say, it's a brand of impersonalism, but it's not the Shankaracharya brand. It's just another way of, reaching that conclusion. But there's something that's the part, a part that makes it similar is vegetarian, austerity, simplicity, going more towards the mode of goodness. And then comes the conception of what is the supreme. And so many people don't function really on the platform of conception. They function on the platform of tradition. Some people are more than just function on the platform of tradition. They really understand what's behind the tradition. That's unusual. It's less frequent. Now, there's two parts. One, the part that you're asking is how do they get from something that's so clear to the diametrically opposite standing? And it has everything to do with affinity and tradition. For example, how did Shankaracharya get so much traction? And then following Shankaracharya, many, it has become ingrained in the conceptions the people in India and in the world hold. It's all one. The affinity to identify oneself with the Supreme is strong. Your question is, how can they take something that's so clear and derive something else from that which is so clear? That's your question. It's like, it's by word jugglery, by intellect that's misguided, then one can do. Coming up very soon, for example, coming up very soon is Ramanujacharya's appearance day. And he, as a young man, was in the school of a Shankara teacher, Yadava Prakash. And he was teaching his students impersonalism through the means of the Upanishads. And then as the student, Ramanuja found it very uncomfortable to describe without the details and details, the way that he was describing, the eyes of the Lord are like the hind part of a monkey that's red. And he, spoke up in class and contradicted him. That, that may be a primary meaning, but primary meanings have to be rejected if it doesn't make sense. And here's another meaning that makes complete sense. His eyes are like of the rising of the sun that reddens the sky, which is a Sanskrit derivative of the word kapi. Anyway, so without all the details, eventually Yadava Prakash became his disciple. The teacher became the student. But that's unusual. But it took some bangs in the head for him to get that understanding, along with the association of such a powerful personality, empowered personality. So back to your question, how can somebody derive some wrong meaning from something that's so clear? Because of a disposition. And then they find some justification, maybe even within their renderings of within the Vedas. So it's resting upon the Vedic authority. Then they read the Vedic authority this way instead of that way, and feel justified because of that. It supports their disposition. But why do people come to the material world? Of a disposition. And one disposition, as we know, is to be the enjoyer of matter. And when that doesn't work, let me reject the enjoyer of matter situation and take the position of I'm the supreme. And let me find things within or searching with that disposition, I'll find things within the scripture that support I'm the supreme. So your question is, how can somebody take something that's so apparent and twist it and come with the opposite disposition and rendering that which is very clear some other way because of disposition? And that intellect can be misguided. And then I think I'm right. Then I have some teaching. And people like the teaching, and so we have a religion. And once people have a religion, just like with Shankar followers or Jain followers or any ism followers, how do you what's a nice Vaishnava to do with such a situation? You present the teachings as they are. You just understand the teachings as they are without filters of my pre-existing conception, because we all have minds that carry some conception. So that's what we do to take care of our misconceptions, and then others get in same principle. Just make the vibration of the teaching the same as the origin. Rishabdev or the Bhagavatam or Krishna, the personality of Godhead, or any of the other avatar forms of the Lord in transcendental sound can purify. But how does it get unpurified? A predisposition, and then taking the Vedic sounds and interpreting through that lens. And feel justified. And it becomes popular. I'm the supreme. Yay. And then build a religion around it. And Rishabdev is, a worthy person to look up to. He's the form of Vishnu. But then if you have an impersonal conception, what's a form of Vishnu? It's something material covering something spiritual. Just like taking that definition, the supreme plus the body. Take away the body or bodily conception, you have you're supreme. He is supreme, and where becomes supreme. So that the personality of Godhead is very merciful. For those that have such disposition, he'll give them the means. And then there's the whole range of everything. And then at the whole range of everything, there's something that's not filtered. Then comes the task of finding the unfiltered. Disciplic succession. And then there's diversity amongst disciplic succession. This view, that view, the other view. In the Vaishnava view, differences of views. But the essence is the essence. Oh, distortion comes when one has a predisposition, and then there's someone ready to say, yes, your predisposition is right. Here's the description that verifies it. Anything else? Yes?
In the translation.
I don't think you need the microphone. You just have a strong voice. Huh? Recording. Okay, go ahead.
So Maharaj, in the translation, Lord Rishabhdev states that within my heart can be found the process of devotional service. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada again mentioned that Lord Rishabhdev states that his heart is composed of dharma. So
That's not,
what is the relation and how we understand that?
nice question. Far from my heart, I have abandoned irreligion and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. That's not the reference you're making? No.
One line above.
Above.
Yeah. Therefore,
within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for devotees.
And then in purport, scroll down, Prabhu. Scroll down. Yeah. Here.
The Dharma is in my heart.
Yes. His heart is composed of dharma.
So his heart is composed of dharma means paradharma, not the worldly, but the paradharma. That's what's in his heart. That devotional service, paradharma. Is that it? On the temporary side. Ladies, anything?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is a doubt regarding yesterday's class. Can I ask Maharaj?
Sure.
Yesterday evening.
Okay.
Yesterday evening, we discussed Bharat Maharaj
Yes.
pastime.
Yes.
So we can understand that it takes him 3 lifetimes to attain perfection. And when we compare it to Ajamila's pastime, the offense committed by Ajamila is serious than the offense committed by Bharat Maharaj.
Yeah.
But still, Ajamila could able to attain perfection within 1 lifetime. How can we understand
The math doesn't work, right? The math doesn't work. Well, which is more serious, sin or offense?
Offense.
Huh?
Offense.
Offense. There's the answer. What Ajamila did was sinful. He was a Brahmana, but not just because he was a Brahmana and did sin. He did sin, bad stuff. And we don't. I meant to. Someone asked the question. one of the questions and answers. How did he fall? Then I spent some time saying that there's extensive commentary. I was planning this morning to find that in Madhurya Kandambani, that's one of the reference places where this topic, how did he fall, due to offense. I don't recall identifying what was his offense. But the mistake was due to offense. And it's more dangerous, more detrimental, pernicious, nice word, due to offense. So it's not like the person of Godhead has got a stopwatch. Okay, you did some offense. It's one lifetime. Okay, you did some offense. You did some sin. It's not quite like that. And there's degrees of everything, including offense. But the consequence of offense is very grave. And he got benediction. The benediction, getting the body of a deer, but remembering his previous life in full. How uncomfortable. And after the body of a deer, remembering his body as of a deer and as a king in the body of the son of a Brahmana. And being tormented and taunted and harassed, and he's squeaky clean. Now, it's not like anybody that's made some offense, whatever that offense might be, because guaranteed we make offense. Just because of our conditioned nature, unintentional or intentional, or not a thoughtless offense. Oh, it's serious stuff. That's the lesson. That's what I said in response to the question yesterday. Beware. But that's why a distinction is one of the explanations of why. Now, the Lord can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have a rule book, and he has to follow the rule book. But that's an explanation.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's really helpful.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a clarification from the initiation class. Maharaj, you had mentioned the bija, the seed, is a tendency or desire to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Mm.
And that the seed is both something within and something received.
Yes.
So the tendency to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that which is within, right?
It's intrinsic, yes.
So what is received, Maharaj?
The awakening of that tendency. There was a nice, overly smart young man wrote a book. Inherent or Inherited was the title of his book. And he took one position, but it's not just one position. And without all the detail, the person was chastised by a number of devotees. So it's not one versus the other. So it's a combination. Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai. The inherent quality of the soul is enhanced and awakened through the association of those who are awakening it, the tendency to serve, disposition to serve. It's a nice topic. It's a nice topic with combination.
My personal application question, I would say. So, in the starting, they say tapo divyam. So you are emphasizing on the tapo, like we have different duties we are to do, but we should not get attached.
It's not what?
We should not get attached.
Don't get attached.
Don't get attached. Certain aspects I could relate it, like as example you are mentioning the cooking or cleaning, doing. This is because we can relate that we are doing is not a material activity. We are doing it for Krishna.
You're speaking too fast. I can't follow. I have to get my hearing aid out. Or you speak slowly.
I can, okay, Maharaj, I will repeat it. So, certain aspects in our daily life, in my daily life, like cooking or other work, I could relate it as a service to Krishna, but especially the job, the work that I do, because we put a bit of passion into it to do it.
Mhm.
So personally, I think that gives a tendency that I am doing it or I am achieving it or something. But how to see that as a, not getting attached and seeing it as a service to Krishna is for me personally is a bit challenging.
Well, to get to that higher consciousness place, there's steps, recommended steps, such as performance of prescribed duty without attachment to the result. Same verse that you looked up the other day. Karmana eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu. So that's karma yoga. You're entitled to perform your prescribed duty. So prescribed duty means how do you determine what's prescribed duty and all those things? And then, but you're not entitled to the result. So you offer the result to the Supreme. If you're not entitled to the result, something happens with that result. You offer it to the Supreme. So that's preliminary. So that's, it's a place to start for, given the question you just asked. The result goes to the Supreme, not just, the paycheck, but the result. So whatever it is, whatever somebody's employment might be, commonly per person work for a company, and the results go to the company, not me. But the consciousness of the worker is that the result, the pay, is Krishna's property. So some portion of Krishna's property is for this, and some portion is for that, some portion is for the other. But even this, that, and the other is all ultimately belongs to Krishna. The result belongs to Krishna. And I'm utilizing the fruit of the work in Krishna's service, according to the formula. And then there's not just, the money, the pay that comes from having the employment, but there's the benefit to be derived. And at some point in time, one may be fortunate enough to get an occupation where the benefit is clearly offered to Krishna. Just like yesterday, we went to visit this Chinese doctor. So there's an occupation where, of course, at least according to Chinese medicine, not according to Ayurveda, but according to Chinese medicine, he is in a position where he can help people to some degree at least become more well and less unwell. And that's an offering unto Krishna. But it's not the highest thing. But the occupation is in the psychophysical nature part. Your prescribed duty that you offer to Krishna is in the psychophysical nature part. So how to elevate that to its pure bhakti. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, take that position. He's the High Court judge. But he was principle based. And etc. Fearless and, undaunted by circumstance. So how to be a householder, how to have an occupation, just take the frame of your question back a little bit and be fully attached to Krishna while you're doing your occupation. It's in gradation, my answer is. And in course of time, the psychophysical taste to do this way and that way and the other thing the other way, that starts to fade. The modes of nature, guna and karma, both start to fade. And then the disposition moves, if done properly, in the direction of detachment from the modes of nature and attachment to simply pleasing Krishna. So it's my answer to your question is there's a gradual spiritualization process based upon the karma yoga principle. And then from the karma yoga principle, the way the Bhagavad Gita is structured, it then leads to Gyan. Karma yoga allows one to be enough detached that the philosophy approaching the absolute truth by Gyan becomes more accessible. And Gyan yoga, when it becomes more mature, it becomes Dhyan and then becomes Bhakti. So that's my answer to your question. It's a progression. And to right away go from the ground floor to 15th floor, you need the elevator. And the elevator can take you to the 15th floor, zoom. But then what's my qualification getting in that elevator? Then, these two things, the mind and the body. Ladashraya, full shelter in Krishna. So we're not there. Or some, we have one foot in the shelter in Krishna boat, another foot in the I'm the doer boat. I'm the cause of the result. And I want to elevate that. So I do therefore the emphasis on chanting and hearing, Shravanam Kirtanam, that's the elevator. And can get us there very quickly. I think we should end. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Those of you running off to school, thank you for attending peacefully.